The sound of the gavel slammed against the wooden desk, echoing through the courtroom like thunder. My heart jumped in my chest. I stared at the woman sitting across from me, my own daughter, her eyes sharp, filled with anger and something deeper I couldn't name. "Mrs. Green," the judge said, his voice deep and measured, "you stand accused of unlawfully keeping custody of your daughter's children for over 13 years. How do you plead?" I gripped the edges of the table so tight my knuckles turned white. My voice trembled, but I forced the words out. "Not guilty, Your Honor. I didn't kidnap anyone. I raised the children she left behind." Gasps whispered through the courtroom. My daughter, Vanessa, folded her arms and looked away, her lawyer whispering something into her ear. I wanted to cry, to scream, to shake her, and ask, "How could you do this to me?" But I sat still, staring at her, remembering the day it all began. "My name is Rosetta Green, and I am 63 years old. I live in a small, faded blue house on the east side of Savannah, Georgia. It's the kind of home that creaks when the wind blows and smells faintly of lemon polish and old prayers. I've lived there for 30 years, long enough to watch the trees grow taller than the roof and to bury my husband in the church graveyard 3 blocks away. When you've lived that long, you learn that life has a funny way of testing how much pain your heart can hold before it cracks. I thought I'd already had my share, losing my husband, surviving breast cancer, and working 2 jobs to make ends meet. But nothing could have prepared me for the day my daughter walked out of my life and left 3 little souls at my doorstep. It was a hot June afternoon, the kind where the air feels heavy and sticks to your skin like syrup. I was sitting on the porch shelling peas when I heard a car door slam. I looked up and saw Vanessa, my only daughter, getting out of her old gray Honda with the kids. Marcus, 9 at the time, jumped out first, all knees and elbows, clutching his favorite toy car. Tasha followed, her pigtails bouncing as she dragged a pink suitcase twice her size. And little Eli, my sweet baby grandson, was fast asleep in his car seat. Vanessa smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that reached her eyes. I hadn't seen her in almost a year. "Mama," she said, rushing up the steps, "can you watch the kids for a few hours? I need to run an errand downtown." "An errand?" I frowned. "What kind of errand?" "Just a few things to handle. I'll be back before dinner." She kissed Eli's forehead, then turned to the older 2. "Be good for Grandma, okay?" Marcus looked worried. "Where are you going, Mom?" She hesitated. "Just to fix something. I'll be right back." And then she left. I watched her car disappear down the dusty road, expecting to see it return within an hour, maybe 2. I even left her a plate of food on the counter. But by the time the sun set, that plate was still there untouched. By midnight, I was pacing the floor. I called her phone over and over, no answer. The next morning, I drove to her apartment. The landlord said she'd moved out 2 weeks earlier. No forwarding address. No message. Nothing. My stomach dropped like a stone. At first, I thought something terrible had happened to her, that maybe she'd been hurt or kidnapped. I called the police and filed a missing person report. They took my statement, asked for a photo, and promised to call if they found anything. But weeks passed. No call. No sighting. No Vanessa. That was 13 years ago. Back then, I was just a tired old nurse working night shifts at Memorial Hospital. Raising 3 children again, at my age, wasn't part of my plan. But life doesn't ask permission. It just hands you what it will and watches how you handle it. I made a decision that night that those children would never feel abandoned again. I packed away the last picture I had of Vanessa, tucked it into an old envelope, and put it in my dresser. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Some nights I'd open it, touch her face on the photo, and whisper, "Where did you go, baby?" The years went by like pages in a worn-out book. I raised those kids on prayer, grit, and instant coffee. Marcus grew tall and quiet, with the same serious eyes his grandfather had. Tasha became my little shadow, smart, stubborn, and always asking questions. And Eli, he was my heart. That boy could make me laugh, even on days I wanted to cry. I attended every school play, every parent-teacher meeting. When the kids asked about their mother, I told them she was away getting better. I thought maybe one day she'd come back ready to be their mother again. But that day never came. Instead, one ordinary morning 13 years later, I got a letter that changed everything. It was in my mailbox, no return address. Just my name written in handwriting I hadn't seen in years, shaky, rushed, but unmistakably hers. Inside was a single photo, Vanessa, standing beside a man in a suit, smiling like she'd never known a day of pain. Below the photo, in red ink, were 3 words, "See you soon." My hands trembled. I sat on the edge of my bed, the letter fluttering in my lap. See me soon? What did she mean? I hid that letter inside an envelope, sealed it, and placed it in my dresser, the same dresser that's seen more tears than any human ear ever should. I told myself not to panic. Maybe she just wanted to reconnect. Maybe, after all these years, she'd come home ready to explain. But I was wrong. A week later, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, I was in the kitchen frying chicken when I heard a knock at the door. I wiped my hands and opened it, and there she was, Vanessa. Her hair was shorter, her face older, sharper. She wore a fitted black suit and sunglasses, even though the porch was shaded. "Vanessa?" I whispered. "Baby, is that you?" She didn't smile. "Hello, Mama." Before I could hug her, 2 men in suits stepped up behind her. One of them handed me a brown envelope. "Mrs. Green," he said, "you've been served." I froze. Served? For what? Vanessa crossed her arms. "You know what for? For stealing my children." Those words hit me like a truck. "What did you just say?" "You heard me." She pointed toward the living room window where Marcus, Tasha, and Eli were sitting, stunned. "You took them from me. You told everyone I abandoned them. You raised them like they were yours." Tasha stood up, trembling. "Mom." Vanessa turned toward her daughter, her voice breaking. "Sweetheart, I never meant to leave you that long. Grandma wouldn't give you back." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "That's not true." I cried. "You left them. You left a note." I stopped myself. The letter. It was the only proof I had. Marcus looked between us, confusion and pain twisting his face. "Grandma, what's going on?" I tried to speak, but no words came out. My throat closed, my vision blurred. I wanted to scream, "I saved you. I loved you," when she couldn't. But the words stuck in my chest. The officer stepped forward, calm but firm. "Mrs. Green, you'll need to appear in court. You can discuss this with your attorney." And just like that, they were gone. Vanessa walked away, without looking back, her heels clicking on the pavement. My heart cracked with every step she took. That night, the kids barely spoke to me. They were confused, hurt. I heard Tasha crying in her room. Marcus wouldn't eat. Eli, my baby, asked the question I couldn't answer. "Grandma, did you really steal us?" I held him close and whispered, "No, baby. I kept you safe." But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a storm 13 years in the making, finally coming home to destroy everything I'd built. The next morning, I opened my dresser drawer and pulled out the envelope, the one I'd kept sealed all these years. Inside was that old photo, and beneath it, the note Vanessa left the night she disappeared. I hadn't read it in over a decade, but the ink was still clear. "Mama, I can't do this anymore. The kids deserve better. Take care of them. If I ever get my life back together, maybe I'll earn the right to be their mother again. Don't look for me." My hands shook as I read those words, over and over. I realized then, this wasn't about truth or lies. It was about guilt, shame, and all the years we both lost. I folded the note gently, slid it back into the envelope, and whispered to myself, "This is what I'll show them when the time comes." But even as I said it, tears blurred my vision. Because I knew, when the truth came out, nobody would walk away unbroken. If this story touched your heart or reminds you of someone you know, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next part of this journey. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. The night after she served me those papers, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vanessa's face, hard, distant, full of something that wasn't just anger. It was pain, guilt, maybe even shame. I replayed every moment of her childhood in my head, trying to understand where I went wrong. What kind of mother raises a daughter who could look her in the eye and call her a kidnapper? By dawn, my pillow was wet and my chest ached like I'd swallowed glass. The house felt heavy that morning, the way it always did after bad news. The air was thick with silence. Marcus didn't come down for breakfast. Tasha sat at the table staring into her cereal until it turned soggy. Eli hovered by the back door like he wanted to disappear. I tried to speak, to tell them everything, but my throat wouldn't cooperate. It felt like one wrong word would break what little family I had left. Finally, Tasha slammed her spoon down. "Grandma," she said, her voice trembling. "Is it true?" I met her eyes. She looked so much like Vanessa at that age. Beautiful, stubborn, fiery. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "I didn't steal you. Your mama left you with me. She said she'd be back in an hour, but she never came." Marcus appeared in the doorway then, his arms crossed, his jaw tight. "Did she leave a note?" he asked sharply. I hesitated. "Yes." "Then why didn't you show us?" "Because I didn't want you to think she didn't love you," I said. "I wanted to protect you from the truth until—" "Until when?" he snapped. "Until it was convenient? You lied to us, Grandma. You made us believe she was gone forever." My chest tightened. I did what I thought was right. Tasha pushed her chair back. "Right for who? You or us?" She stormed out before I could answer, her bedroom door slamming upstairs. The sound echoed through me like thunder. Eli came forward then, quiet as a whisper. "Grandma," he said, his voice barely audible, "I don't think you'd ever hurt us. But why didn't you tell the police she left a note? Wouldn't that prove she wanted you to keep us?" I sank into a chair. "I did tell them, baby. I showed them the letter, but they didn't care. They said without her signature or witnesses, it wasn't proof. They said maybe I forged it. So I kept it safe. I kept you safe." He nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. Then he said something that broke me even more. "I believe you, but I don't think Marcus does." When he walked away, I sat alone at the kitchen table, surrounded by the sound of nothing. The clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, birds chirped like it was any other morning. But inside me, something heavy shifted. I'd spent 13 years building a life out of love and lies, and now it was all unraveling. Later that day, I called my friend Loretta, a retired teacher who'd been my neighbor since my kids were little. "Baby, you sound awful," she said when she picked up. "It's Vanessa," I whispered. "She's back." There was a long pause. "Oh, Lord. After all these years." "She's suing me, Loretta. Says I kidnapped her children." Loretta gasped. "That girl done lost her mind. You raised those babies. Everyone in town knows it." "I don't know what she's thinking," I said. "But she's serious. Lawyers, police, the whole thing." "Do you have proof she left them?" "Yes. The note. But I don't know if it's enough." Loretta was quiet for a moment, then said, "You've done right all your life, Rosetta. God, don't sleep. The truth will come out." I wanted to believe her. But that night, when I stood in my window watching the porch light flicker, I felt more alone than I ever had. The next few weeks were a blur of court dates, phone calls, and cold dinners. The lawyer I hired, a kind young woman named Sandra, told me the case would be tough. "It's her word against yours," she said. "Do you have any witnesses from the time she left?" "Just the police report," I said. "But it's old." "Bring everything you have," she said gently. "And Mrs. Green, be prepared. Family cases like this, they're emotional, especially when children are involved." Children. They weren't children anymore. Marcus was in college now, juggling part-time work and classes. Tasha had been accepted into a debate scholarship program. Eli was preparing to graduate high school. They were smart, strong, and full of promise, and now their world was being pulled apart because their mother and grandmother couldn't agree on what was real. I could see the toll it took on them. Marcus stopped visiting home for weekends. Tasha avoided me, locking herself in her room whenever she was around. Only Eli stayed close, helping me cook dinner, checking on me before bed. One evening, as we washed dishes together, he said quietly, "Grandma, do you think Mom will win?" I paused, the sponge slipping from my fingers. "I don't know, baby. The court doesn't always see love the way we do." He looked at me, eyes wide with worry. "If she wins, do we have to go with her?" My heart sank. "You're almost grown now, Eli. Nobody can make you do anything you don't want to. But your mama, she's still your mama." He nodded, but the sadness in his eyes said he understood more than he should have to. A few days later, I went to church for the first time in months. I sat in the back pew, head bowed, as the choir sang Amazing Grace. The words hit different now. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. I wondered if Vanessa felt lost all those years. If maybe she'd come back because she was drowning in guilt. Or if she just wanted to erase the years she'd missed by blaming me. After the service, Pastor James approached me. "Sister Rosetta," he said kindly, "you've been carrying a heavy burden. Let the Lord fight your battles." I smiled weakly. "I'm trying, Pastor, but it feels like I'm fighting my own blood." He nodded. "Sometimes the hardest wars are fought at the dinner table, not the battlefield." Those words stayed with me. One rainy afternoon, about 2 weeks before the court date, I received another letter. Same handwriting. No return address. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of paper. "Mama, you think you know everything, but you don't. You never asked what I went through. You just took over like I was dead. I'm coming to take back what's mine. Don't stand in my way." No signature this time. Just anger on paper. I sank into my chair, tears burning my eyes. What happened to the daughter who used to sing in the choir, who cried at Disney movies, who promised she'd never abandon her children like her father abandoned us? That night, I took out the old envelope again. The one with her first note, the one I'd kept sealed for 13 years. I placed it beside the new one and stared at them both. Two versions of the same woman, one begging for help, the other demanding power. I didn't know which was real anymore. The next morning, Tasha came to me. Her eyes were swollen, like she hadn't slept. "Grandma," she said, "Mom called me last night." My heart stopped. "What did she say?" "She told me you brainwashed us, that you made her look like a monster." I swallowed hard. "And what do you believe?" Tasha's lip quivered. "I don't know what to believe anymore." She turned away before I could answer, her voice breaking. "I just want this to be over." When she left, I sat on the couch staring at the family photos lining my wall. There we were, me, Marcus, Tasha, and Eli, smiling in front of the Christmas tree, blowing out birthday candles, hugging at graduations. All those moments, built on love and sacrifice, now being turned into evidence in a courtroom. The day before the hearing, Sandra came over to go through documents. "You need to bring everything," she said, spreading papers across the table. "Birth certificates, the police report, and most importantly, the note your daughter left." I hesitated. "That note, it's personal." "I know," she said softly, "but it's also the truth. Without it, they'll say you fabricated everything." I went to my room, opened my dresser, and retrieved the envelope. The paper was yellowing, the ink fading slightly, but it still carried the scent of lavender from the sachet I'd stored with it. I held it to my chest for a moment before handing it over. Sandra looked at it carefully. "This could save you, Mrs. Green." I nodded, though my throat felt tight. "It's not about saving me," I said quietly. "It's about saving what's left of my family." That night, I couldn't eat. I sat by the window, watching the rain hit the glass, and thought about the first time I held Vanessa in my arms. She was so tiny, with her father's eyes and my nose. I promised her I'd always protect her, even from herself. And somehow, that promise had brought me here, to this bitter end where mother and daughter stood on opposite sides of a courtroom. When the clock struck midnight, I whispered into the dark, "Lord, if I have to lose everything for the truth to come out, so be it. But please don't let my grandchildren hate me." As the rain fell harder, thunder rolling in the distance, I felt something shift inside me. Fear gave way to resolve. Tomorrow, I would walk into that courtroom not as a victim, not as an old woman accused of kidnapping, but as a grandmother who had done what she must to protect the only family she had left. And though my heart trembled, I knew one thing for certain: this was far from over. The truth had been buried for 13 years, but come morning, it would finally begin to surface. The storm outside roared louder, rattling the windows, but I didn't flinch. I just sat there in the glow of the porch light, clutching that envelope to my chest, whispering to myself over and over, "Hold on, Rosetta. The truth is coming." And deep down, I prayed that when it did, it wouldn't destroy us all. The moment the police officer knocked on my door again that evening, I knew peace wasn't meant for me. I had just started to believe maybe, just maybe, the nightmare was over. I'd cleaned the kitchen, lit a candle, and tried to force myself to eat something. But the knock shattered whatever calm I had stitched together. My hands trembled as I went to answer it, my heart thudding so violently I could barely breathe. "Mrs. Adeyemi?" the officer asked. His voice was cautious, softer than before. I recognized him. The same one who stood by the graveside earlier that day, his cap tilted slightly, eyes avoiding mine as they lowered the coffin. "Yes," I managed, though my voice came out a whisper. He looked over his shoulder, as if checking to see if anyone was watching. Then he leaned forward and said quietly, "Ma, we need you to come with us. There's something you need to see." Those words froze me. Something you need to see. My first instinct was to refuse. I couldn't handle another shock. But the way he avoided my gaze told me it wasn't something I could ignore. I grabbed my shawl, slipped on my sandals, and followed him outside into the cold night. The drive was silent. Every bump in the road echoed like a heartbeat inside my chest. I didn't know where we were going, and I didn't ask. My mind replayed the moment at the funeral when I received that message. "I am still alive. Trust no one." I deleted it out of fear someone would think I was delusional. But now, sitting in that police car, every part of me screamed that maybe, just maybe, it was true. We stopped at an abandoned warehouse near the outskirts of town. The same kind of place my husband used to drive to for his business meetings. The officer motioned for me to stay behind him as he opened the creaking metal door. "Ma, please don't be alarmed," he said quietly. But when I stepped inside, my knees almost gave out. There, lying on the floor, was a man who looked exactly like my husband. Same build, same face, same scar under his chin, but he was unconscious, covered in dirt and bruises. My breath hitched. "No," I whispered. No, this can't be." The officer exchanged a look with his partner. "We found him wandering near the border 2 nights ago. No ID. He said he was in an accident. We didn't believe him until we ran his prints." "His prints?" I said faintly. "They match your husband's, Ma." My whole body started shaking. But I buried him this morning." He looked away. "We don't understand it either." I stumbled backward, covering my mouth, staring at the man who was supposed to be dead. His face twitched slightly, his chest rising and falling shallowly. My mind couldn't keep up. The scent of soil and sweat filled the air. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Then, his eyes fluttered open. "Eliza," he croaked. My heart stopped. That voice, it was his. Raw, weak, but his. I took a step closer, my legs trembling. "Richard?" He coughed violently, struggling to sit up. "They tried to kill me," he rasped. "It was never an accident." I dropped to my knees beside him, tears spilling before I could stop them. "What are you talking about? You're supposed to be dead." "The car, the body, everything." He grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "That body wasn't me. They wanted everyone to believe it was. They needed me gone." "Who, Richard? Who did this?" He glanced toward the officers and lowered his voice. "Someone close. Someone I trusted." His eyes darted toward me, desperate, wild. "You have to be careful. They know about you. They know everything." Before I could ask more, one of the officers intervened. "Ma'am, we'll take him to the hospital. He needs medical attention." But Richard shook his head fiercely. No hospital. No police. They'll find me there. The officers exchanged uncertain looks. I leaned closer. Then where do we go? Home, he whispered. Just take me home. Please. Against every logical thought in my head, I nodded. The police reluctantly agreed to escort us back. I sat beside Richard in the back seat, watching his face, his breathing, his trembling hands. He looked like a ghost brought back to life. When we reached the house, I helped him inside. The moment we crossed the threshold, he clutched my arm and whispered, "They planted something. Check the study. Drawer under the cabinet." I frowned, but went as he said. I found the drawer, yanked it open, and my breath caught a small black flash drive hidden beneath a stack of old receipts. I turned it over in my hand. "What's this?" I asked. Richard sank into the sofa, his voice weak. "Proof," he said, "of everything." I was shaking. "Richard, I thought you died in that car. I thought." He looked up at me, eyes full of regret. "I faked that trip. I was planning to run. But they found out. Someone tipped them off." "Who?" He swallowed hard. "Your sister." The room tilted. My sister, Miriam? The one who cried harder than anyone at the funeral? The one who held me as I broke down? I couldn't believe it. "No," I whispered. "That's impossible." "She was working with them," he said, voice cracking. "They wanted the company, the accounts, everything I built. Miriam was their inside link." I backed away slowly, my mind spinning. "You're saying my sister tried to have you killed?" He nodded weakly. "And she'll come for you next. Because she thinks I left everything to you." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. A message. Unknown number. He shouldn't have come back. I gasped, dropping the phone. Richard grabbed my arm. "It's already started," he muttered. Within minutes, the lights flickered. Outside, a car door slammed. I peeked through the curtains, and there she was. Miriam, standing at the gate, her face half hidden under a hood. My stomach dropped. "She's here." Richard tried to stand, but his legs gave out. "Don't open the door," he rasped. "Don't trust her." But I couldn't just stand there. I grabbed the nearest thing, a kitchen knife, and crept toward the door. My hands were slick with sweat. When I opened it, she was already smiling. "Eliza," she said softly, as if we were still sisters, still the girls who used to share secrets in the dark. "You look surprised." "Miriam," I said, my voice shaking. "What are you doing here?" She tilted her head. "I came to see how you're holding up. Funerals can be exhausting, can't they?" Her words were sharp, deliberate. I realized she was testing me to see if I knew. I forced a smile. "Yes." "It's been difficult." She stepped closer, eyes scanning the house. "Mind if I come in?" I hesitated. My heart pounded so loudly, I was sure she could hear it. "Now's not a good time." "Oh, but I insist," she said, pushing past me. Her gaze swept the living room and froze when she saw Richard sitting there. For a moment, everything went still. The ticking clock, the rustle of the curtains. Even the air seemed to stop. Her face went pale. "You..." Richard looked up, voice hoarse. "You failed." Miriam's mask dropped instantly. The sweet, grieving sister vanished. What replaced her was cold, furious calculation. "So you crawled back," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You should have stayed dead." I stepped between them, my hand tightening around the knife. "You're not hurting him again." She laughed, quiet, chilling. "Oh, Eliza. You think you know what's going on, but you don't. You were just the bait. The helpless wife everyone would pity while we took everything cleanly." "We?" I asked. She smiled. "You'll find out soon enough." And then she turned and walked out, calm as ever. But as she did, she whispered, "Check your counts." When she left, I ran straight to my laptop. My heart sank. Every joint account Richard and I shared emptied. Even the house was under her name now. She had planned it perfectly. I looked at Richard, who was now pale and barely conscious. "What do we do now?" He closed his eyes. That flash drive, it's our only chance. It has everything, emails, transfers, conversations. But we have to move fast before she destroys it all. As I sat beside him, listening to his ragged breathing, one thought consumed me. My husband was alive, my sister was a traitor, and I was standing in the middle of a storm I hadn't even seen coming. Outside, thunder rumbled, the rain beginning to pour. And for the first time since his death, I realized something. I wasn't the grieving widow anymore. I was a woman with a secret the whole world wanted buried. And this time, I wasn't going down quietly. Because if Miriam thought she could steal my life, she was about to learn grief had changed me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was ready to fight. And no one, not even my own blood, was going to stop me. The night felt longer than any I had ever lived. Rain beat against the windows in angry waves, and the thunder seemed to mimic the chaos that had taken root inside my chest. Richard was lying on the couch, pale and feverish, murmuring things I could barely make out. Every time his breath hitched, I panicked, thinking he might slip away again, this time for real. I couldn't lose him.
Not now.
Not after everything I'd just learned. But my mind wouldn't rest. Miriam's words echoed endlessly. You'll find out soon enough. I stared at the flash drive in my trembling hand, wondering if I had the courage to see what secrets it held. I finally plugged it into the laptop. My stomach twisted as the files loaded, folders labeled with names I didn't recognize, numbers, offshore accounts, even videos. One folder was titled Operation Rebirth. I clicked it open, and what I saw made my skin crawl. There were recordings of Richard, of Miriam, even of me. Secretly filmed conversations, bank transfers, phone logs. One video caught my attention. It was dated just a week before the supposed accident. In the clip, Richard sat in an office, talking to Miriam. Miriam, it's getting risky, he said. If they find out we've been moving funds through your name. She interrupted him sharply.
Relax.
I've handled worse. Just make sure your wife doesn't suspect anything. My breath caught. My wife.
They were talking about me.
Then she leaned closer in the video, voice dripping with malice. You think you can just walk away, Richard? We started this together. If you try to back out, I'll make sure Eliza thinks you're dead, and she'll never know the truth. The video ended abruptly, leaving me staring at the black screen, shaking. My throat went dry. Richard hadn't told me everything. He hadn't been an innocent victim. He had worked with her. I turned to look at him, sleeping restlessly on the couch, his brow beaded with sweat. For the first time, I felt something colder than fear, betrayal. Richard, I whispered. What did you do? He stirred but didn't wake. His lips moved faintly, forming my name like a prayer. I wanted to scream, to shake him awake and demand the truth, but before I could act, headlights flashed outside the window. A car stopped at the gate. My heart seized. I moved the curtain slightly. Two men stepped out, both in black suits, carrying something metallic that glinted under the rain.
Guns.
I froze. Richard suddenly jerked awake. Eliza, turn off the lights. I did, plunging the room into darkness. He tried to stand, gripping the edge of the sofa, his face twisted with pain. They found me, he whispered hoarsely. We have to go.
Now.
But how? Through the back, he hissed. Don't argue. I ran to grab my bag and the flash drive, stuffing them inside. The pounding at the front door started almost immediately after, the sharp, deliberate knocks of men who didn't plan to wait long. Richard leaned on me as we stumbled toward the back door, his weight heavy against my shoulder. My mind raced through every possible escape route. The rain was pouring harder now, thunder rumbling in the distance like a warning drum. As we reached the back door, I heard the front lock snap. They were inside. Go, Richard whispered urgently. We stumbled into the yard, feet sinking into wet mud. I helped him over the fence, my hands trembling. We barely made it to the alley when the first gunshot rang out, loud and close. I flinched, covering my ears. Run, he shouted.
We did.
Down the dark alley, through puddles, past the barking of startled dogs. I didn't know where we were heading, only that we had to stay alive. We ended up behind a small mechanic workshop, half collapsed and smelling of oil. I pushed open the back door and guided him inside. He slumped onto a pile of old tires, breathing heavily. "They won't stop," he muttered. "Not until I'm gone for good." I crouched beside him, panting. "Who are they, Richard? Tell me the truth." He closed his eyes, rain dripping from his hair. "It started as business. Money laundering offshore deals." Miriam introduced me to them. "They promised quick profits, said no one would get hurt. But it wasn't just money. They were moving something else, something dangerous. When I tried to pull out, they made me disappear." My mind reeled. "You lied to me. All those years. You said you were building a future for us. But you were dealing with criminals." He didn't deny it. I was a fool. I thought I could control it. I stared at him, the love I once felt fighting against the fury building inside me. "And Miriam? She became one of them," he said bitterly. "When they decided to eliminate me, she helped. She told them where I'd be that night. But something went wrong. The explosion was smaller than planned. I barely escaped. They replaced me with another body before the police arrived. The image of the coffin, the funeral, the smell of roses, all of it flashed in my mind. My whole life had been a performance staged by the people closest to me. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, not from fear, but from heartbreak. You both destroyed everything." He looked at me weakly. "I know, but if you can expose them, Eliza, maybe we can make it right."
We.
I repeated coldly. "You don't get to say we anymore." Before he could answer, we heard voices outside, the same men searching. "We have to move," I said. He tried to stand but collapsed. "I can't," he whispered. I hesitated for a moment, torn between saving him and saving myself. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out the flash drive. "If I don't make it," he said, eyes locking onto mine, "take this to the press. Or the police. Don't trust anyone else." The sound of boots crunching outside snapped me back to reality. I helped him up again, both of us drenched, trembling, exhausted. We slipped through the side of the building, down another alley, and into the maze of the old neighborhood. At last, we found refuge in an old apartment block where no one asked questions. I paid cash to a woman downstairs and carried Richard to a dim, empty room on the second floor. He was barely conscious now. I covered him with a blanket and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the flash drive again. My thoughts were a blur: fear, anger, disbelief. Then my phone buzzed again. A new message. "You can't hide him forever." No name. No number. I deleted it immediately, then turned off the phone. My pulse wouldn't settle. As dawn began to break, Richard stirred again. His voice was barely audible. "Eliza."
I'm sorry.
"For everything. You didn't deserve any of this." I didn't answer. I just sat there, staring at him. I didn't know if I hated him or pitied him. Maybe both. When he finally fell asleep again, I stood quietly and walked to the window. Outside, the city was waking up, unaware of the chaos brewing behind these walls. I made a decision then. I wasn't going to wait for Miriam to come for me. I was going to confront her, on my own terms. I left Richard sleeping, took the flash drive, and slipped out. I knew where she'd be. She always went to the same penthouse office downtown, the one she inherited from our father. I took a taxi, every second of the ride feeling like a countdown to something irreversible. When I arrived, the receptionist tried to stop me, but I pushed past her. I stormed into Miriam's office. She was there, of course, perfectly calm, sipping tea like she'd been expecting me. "Eliza," she said smoothly, "you look awful." I slammed the flash drive on her desk. "It's over, Miriam. I know everything." She smiled faintly. "Do you? Stop pretending. I saw the files. I know what you and Richard did." "Ah, so he told you," she said, leaning back. "How touching. And let me guess, he said I was the villain? You tried to kill him," I shouted. She laughed softly. "No, dear sister. I tried to stop him. He was about to turn you in, too." You really think he was planning to start fresh? He was going to make you the scapegoat. The accounts, the transfers, all under your name. My breath hitched. You're lying. Am I? She turned her monitor around. My blood turned cold. On the screen was an account list, every transaction linked to my personal details. My ID, my tax number, my name. I staggered back. No, that's not possible. She smiled. Oh, it's very possible. He was good at covering his tracks until I made sure they pointed to you instead. My hands started shaking. Why are you doing this? Because, she said, standing slowly, you always had the life I wanted. The love, the sympathy. You were the perfect wife, the sweet sister, while I was the one cleaning up your husband's mess. Her eyes hardened. Now you'll take the fall for both of us. Before I could react, she pressed a button under her desk. 2 men appeared at the door, the same ones from the night before. Miriam, don't do this, I begged. Oh, Eliza, she said with a sigh, you always were too soft. The men stepped forward. I did the only thing I could. I grabbed the flash drive and ran. They shouted, but I was already halfway down the corridor. Adrenaline carried me. I didn't stop running until I reached the street. I didn't look back. By the time I made it to a crowded bus station, my hands were trembling so hard I could barely hold the drive. My mind was a storm of betrayal and fury. Everyone I loved had used me, lied to me, tried to erase me, but they had underestimated the one thing I had left, my will to survive. I knew what I had to do next. I wasn't going to the police. I was going straight to the media with everything. Miriam wanted a war? Then a war she would get. And this time, I wasn't the grieving widow anymore. I was the hunter. I never imagined walking into a courtroom with my heart split clean in half of it still loving my daughter, and the other half bracing for the wound she was about to give me again. The sound of my own footsteps echoed across the polished floor as I entered the courthouse that morning, holding the same handbag I'd carried for years. Inside it was everything that had kept me alive these past months, a worn photograph of my grandkids, my late husband's handkerchief, and the old sealed envelope I'd sworn I would only open if I had no other choice. Today, that choice was staring me in the face. Vanessa sat at the plaintiff's table, dressed in a sharp gray suit, her hair tied back in a bun that looked too tight to be comfortable. She wouldn't meet my eyes. 13 years of silence, and now she sat less than 10 feet away, accusing me of kidnapping her children, the same children she had left without a goodbye. Her lawyer whispered something to her, and she nodded slightly, pretending I was a stranger. Mrs. Green, my attorney murmured, gently touching my elbow. Are you ready? I nodded, though I wasn't sure I could ever be ready for this. The bailiff called the courtroom to order, and the judge, a gray-haired man with kind eyes and a stern voice, entered. His presence demanded silence. We are here to continue the case of Vanessa Green versus Rosetta Green, he began. The plaintiff alleges that the defendant unlawfully retained custody of her children for 13 years. Mrs. Green, are you prepared to proceed? I stood slowly. Yes, Your Honor. The words felt like gravel in my throat. Vanessa's lawyer started the opening statements. He painted me as a manipulative old woman who had taken advantage of her daughter's moment of weakness. He said I had erased Vanessa's identity, changed the children's last names, and told them their mother was dead. I felt my stomach twist, every lie cutting deeper than the last. When it was my turn, my lawyer spoke of sacrifice, how I had reported my daughter missing, raised those kids when no one else would, paid their school fees, stayed up with them through sickness and heartbreak. But his words sounded small compared to the performance Vanessa's lawyer gave. They called her to the stand. The bailiff swore her in, and for the first time, Vanessa looked at me. Her eyes were cold, guarded, like a stranger's. Ms. Green, her lawyer began softly, can you tell the court what happened 13 years ago? She took a deep breath, her voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. I was struggling back then. My marriage had failed, I lost my job, and I had 3 small children. I left them with my mother temporarily, just for a few hours, while I looked for work. But when I came back, she and the kids were gone. The house was empty. I gasped softly. My lawyer whispered for me to stay calm. Vanessa continued, tears glistening on her cheeks. For years, I tried to find them. My mother changed her number, moved out of state, and told everyone I was dead. She made my children believe I didn't want them. Every sentence felt like a blade. I wanted to shout that she was lying, that she was the one who left and never looked back, but the judge raised his hand before I could speak. Mrs. Green, you'll have your turn, he said gently. When the lawyer finished, Vanessa wiped her eyes and looked down, like she couldn't bear the sight of me. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to clutch the edge of the table to stay steady. Then it was my turn. I took the stand, my heart pounding. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear my pulse in my ears. Mrs. Green, my lawyer said, can you tell the court what happened the day your daughter left? I nodded. It was a Tuesday. She came to my house around noon, carrying the baby and holding the other two by the hand. She said she needed to run an errand. Just for an hour. She looked tired. I thought maybe she needed to rest, so I told her to take her time. She kissed the kids goodbye and drove off. And did she return that day? I swallowed hard.
No.
Not that day, not that week. I waited. I called. I even filed a missing persons report after 3 weeks. But no one ever found her. The lawyer nodded. And what did you do next? What any mother would do, I said, my voice breaking. I raised her children. I fed them, clothed them, prayed over them every night. I told them their mother loved them, but she wasn't well. I never said she was dead. Vanessa's lawyer jumped up. Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. Sustained, the judge said, but he gave me a sympathetic look. Continue, Mrs. Green. Keep to what you personally witnessed.
So I did.
I told them about the nights I stayed awake worrying, about the holidays I pretended were happy so the kids wouldn't cry, about the time Tasha asked if she could call me mom because she couldn't remember Vanessa's face anymore. By the time I finished, even the stenographer was blinking back tears. But Vanessa's expression didn't change. She just sat there, her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes hard as stone. Then her lawyer stood and began cross-examination. Mrs. Green, is it true that you legally changed your grandchildren's last names? Yes, I said softly. When they started school, it was easier for them to use mine. No one could locate their mother. And you never told them about their mother's condition or whereabouts? I couldn't tell them what I didn't know. He smirked faintly. Or what you didn't want them to know. Objection, my lawyer snapped. Sustained, the judge said. The lawyer leaned closer. Mrs. Green, isn't it true that you didn't want Vanessa to come back? That you enjoyed being the center of those children's lives? That one stung deep. I didn't enjoy it, I said, my voice shaking. I endured it, because someone had to. He nodded slowly, pretending to show empathy. And you have no proof, no written consent from Vanessa to keep those children, do you? I hesitated, glancing toward my bag, the one holding the envelope. My fingers twitched, but I forced myself to wait. No, I said quietly. The lawyer smiled, satisfied. No further questions. When I stepped down, I could feel the weight of the entire courtroom pressing on me. My knees trembled. My lawyer whispered, "Hold on, Mrs. Green. We're not done yet." The afternoon dragged on with witnesses, social workers, teachers, even neighbors.
Some spoke kindly about me.
Others admitted they thought it was odd that Vanessa never came around. When it was time for closing arguments, Vanessa's lawyer painted her as a victim of a controlling mother who had robbed her of her own children. He spoke of forgiveness, redemption, and second chances. Then my lawyer stood. His tone was calm but strong. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a case of kidnapping. It's a case of abandonment. Mrs. Green did what any loving grandmother would do. She stepped in when her daughter disappeared. She didn't steal those children. She saved them." I held my breath as he turned toward the judge. "And if the court would permit, Mrs. Green has one final piece of evidence to submit." Vanessa's lawyer frowned. What evidence? My lawyer nodded to me. My hands shook as I reached into my bag and pulled out the old envelope, the one Vanessa left the day she walked away. The judge leaned forward. What is that, Mrs. Green? It's a letter, Your Honor. The day my daughter left, she put this on my kitchen table. I kept it all these years. Vanessa's lawyer immediately objected. Your Honor, this could be fabricated. The judge held up a hand. I'll determine that. Bring it here, Mrs. Green. I rose and walked slowly to the bench, the letter trembling in my hand. He examined it carefully. Old paper, faded ink, a postmark from 13 years ago. Then he opened it and began to read aloud. The courtroom went silent. Mama, I can't do this anymore. The kids deserve better than me. I don't know who I am anymore or what I'm doing. Please take care of them like you always have. If I ever get my life back together, maybe I'll earn the right to be their mother again. Don't look for me, Vanessa. The judge's voice softened as he finished. Then he looked up slowly, eyes heavy with disbelief. Ms. Green, he said, turning toward Vanessa. Did you write this? Vanessa's face went pale. I don't remember writing anything like that. Your handwriting matches, the judge said. And this postmark confirms the date. Do your children know about this letter? She said nothing. I felt the tears spill down my cheeks. I met the judge's gaze and whispered, Not yet, Your Honor. The room was silent for a long, heavy moment. Then the judge sighed deeply. Mrs. Green, I'm dismissing all charges against you. You acted out of love, not malice. Ms. Green, I suggest you speak to your children and to your mother, not as enemies, but as family. His gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed like thunder in my chest. The courtroom broke into quiet murmurs. Vanessa covered her face, crying softly. I stood frozen, unsure whether to approach her or walk away forever. Finally, she lifted her head. Mama, she whispered. That one word undid me. I crossed the space between us and took her hands. They were cold, trembling. I never stopped loving you, I said. Not for a single day. She shook her head, sobbing. I was so lost, Mama. I thought if I blamed you, it would hurt less. We stood there, two broken women clinging to what little was left between us. The kids, my grandkids, were waiting outside. Marcus saw us first, confusion flickering across his face. Grandma? Mom? I smiled through my tears. We'll explain everything soon, baby. But right now, we're going home. As we walked out of that courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in years. The truth had finally been spoken. Not everyone would forgive right away. Not every wound would heal neatly. But at least we could start. When we reached the parking lot, I turned to Vanessa and said softly, Family isn't about who leaves. It's about who stays, even when it hurts. She nodded, tears still streaming down her face. And for the first time in 13 long years, I felt hope return to my heart. The courtroom was cold that morning, too cold for October in Georgia. I could feel the chill sinking deep into my bones, but it wasn't the air conditioning that made me shiver. It was her, my daughter, standing just 10 feet away, eyes burning into mine like I was a stranger who'd stolen everything from her. Her lawyer stood beside her, tall, clean-cut, and dripping with arrogance. He kept whispering things to her, pretending to comfort her while she dabbed her eyes with a tissue, like she was the victim of some great tragedy. The sight turned my stomach. 13 years. 13 long years since that girl dropped her 3 babies at my doorstep and said, Mama, I'll be back in an hour. That hour turned into nights, nights into weeks, weeks into years, and then suddenly she was here again, dragging me into court, calling me a kidnapper. The judge adjusted his glasses, shuffling papers on his desk. Mrs. Price, he said, his tone neutral but firm. You've heard the accusations. Your daughter claims you kept the children against her will for over a decade. What do you have to say? For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat locked up, and every word I'd rehearsed vanished like mist. Then I looked over at my grandkids, my babies, really. Michael, now 18, sat stiffly in a shirt too tight for his broad shoulders. Naomi clutched her hands in her lap, trying not to cry. And little Avery, only 13, refused to even look at her mother. That gave me the courage I needed. Your Honor, I began, my voice trembling but clear. I didn't kidnap anyone. My daughter left those children with me. She said she needed to clear her head, and I believed her. Days passed, then weeks, then months. I called her number. It was disconnected. I went to her apartment. She was gone. No trace. I even filed a missing person report. I raised those children because someone had to. Her lawyer cut in immediately. Objection. Irrelevant emotional testimony. The judge waved his hand. Overruled. Continue, Mrs. Price. I took a deep breath. I raised them like my own. I fed them, clothed them, put them in school, took them to church every Sunday. I never hid them. Everybody in town knew those were Monica's children. I just couldn't let them grow up in the system. At that, Monica scoffed. You're lying. You wanted them to love you more than me. You poisoned them against me. Her voice cracked, and for a second, I saw the little girl I used to rock to sleep. The one who used to say, Mama, promise you'll always love me, no matter what. The judge banged his gavel. Miss Price, you'll have your turn. But my heart was beating too loud to care. I'd kept my mouth shut for years, swallowing every hurt and insult, every cold silence from the neighbors who whispered that my daughter was gone because of me. But now, with my life and reputation hanging in the balance, I wasn't about to hold back. When you left, Monica, I said, my voice steady now, you didn't just walk away from your kids. You left an envelope on the kitchen table. Inside it was $500 and a note that said, Mama, please keep them safe. I can't do this anymore. I kept that letter, Your Honor. I kept it for 13 years because I knew one day I might need proof of the truth. Her lawyer straightened up, ready to object again, but I was already reaching into my purse. My hands shook as I pulled out the old, worn envelope. The paper was yellowed, edges curled, ink faded, but it was real. Every word in that letter carried the weight of a mother's breaking point. When I handed it to the clerk, the whole courtroom went silent. The judge took the letter, unfolded it carefully, and read it to himself. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint ticking of the courtroom clock. After what felt like forever, he looked up at Monica, then back at me.
His voice softened.
Mrs. Price, this changes a great deal. He glanced back at my daughter. Miss Price, were you aware of this letter? Monica's face went pale. That's not real, she whispered. She forged it. She's lying. Do you wish for a handwriting analysis? The judge asked quietly. Her lawyer leaned in and murmured something, but Monica shook her head violently.
No.
No, this isn't fair. She took them from me. Michael suddenly stood up. That's not true, he shouted, his voice cracking with years of bottled pain. You left us. I remember that day. You were crying, you hugged us, and you said, Grandma will take care of you now. You told me to be strong. Michael, sit down. I whispered, but it was too late. His tears came fast, hot, and furious. Why are you doing this now? He said, glaring at his mother. You don't get to walk back in after all this time and pretend you're the victim. Grandma didn't kidnap us. She saved us. Naomi joined in, her voice trembling. We waited, Mom. We waited for you. I used to cry every night, hoping you'd come back. But you didn't. Monica covered her face, sobbing, but I couldn't tell if it was guilt or anger driving her tears. The judge watched quietly, his expression unreadable. When the commotion settled, he spoke again. I will need to review all evidence before making a final ruling. But based on what I've seen today, I'm inclined to believe Mrs. Price acted in good faith. It should have felt like victory, but it didn't. That night, back home, the house was heavy with silence. The grandkids were upstairs, too shaken to eat. I sat in my old rocking chair by the window, clutching the letter. Outside, the streetlights flickered against the rain. 13 years of sacrifice, of sleepless nights, of wondering if I'd done the right thing. It all felt like it was crashing over me at once. I'd raised those kids on my pension, working part-time at the grocery store to make ends meet. I'd missed out on so many things, my own peace, my health, just so they could have a normal life. And now the child I once held close had turned the world against me. I heard a soft knock. It was Naomi. "Grandma, can I sit with you?" "Of course, baby." She curled up beside me, resting her head on my shoulder. "Why does Mom hate you so much?" she whispered. I stroked her hair. "She doesn't hate me, baby. She's just lost. Sometimes people run away from the parts of their lives that hurt too much." "She hurt us," Naomi said, voice hardening. I didn't answer. The truth was, Naomi was right. Monica had hurt all of us, but she'd hurt herself most of all. Later that night, I went to my room and pulled out an old box from under the bed. Inside were all the little memories I'd saved, baby pictures, report cards, a lock of Monica's hair from her first haircut. I found another envelope in there too, one Monica had sent me 2 years after she left. No return address, no explanation, just a picture of her standing beside a man I'd never met. I remembered crying for hours when it came, wondering if she was alive, if she was happy. Now, looking at it again, I noticed something I hadn't before, a small handwritten note on the back of the photo. It said, "I'll come back when I'm ready." Ready for what, I thought? To reclaim the life she abandoned? To rewrite the past? The next morning, her lawyer called. "Mrs. Price," he said coldly, "Monica wants to settle privately. She's willing to drop the case if you agree to let her have visitation rights." Visitation rights. For children she hadn't seen in over a decade. I didn't answer immediately. "Tell her," I said finally, "that she can come visit anytime she's ready to face the truth. But she's not taking them from me." When I hung up, I felt a strange calm wash over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. The kids needed closure, and so did I. That weekend, we visited their mother. It wasn't easy. The air between us was thick with years of unspoken pain. But when Monica saw her children up close, how tall Michael had grown, how Naomi smiled just like she used to, her walls began to crack. She reached for Avery first, the youngest. Avery hesitated, then slowly hugged her. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something. I stood a few feet away, watching the family I'd held together finally begin to mend, even if it was just barely. And though my heart ached with every beat, I realized something. I'd done my job. I'd kept them safe. I'd honored her letter. But as I turned to leave the room, Monica called out softly, "Mama." I froze. I hadn't heard her call me that in over 13 years. "Thank you," she whispered. I didn't look back. I just nodded and walked away, tears spilling freely down my cheeks. Because even if forgiveness came too late, it had still come. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. My name is Rosetta Green. I'm 68 years old. I raised 3 grandchildren that weren't supposed to be mine to raise, buried the dreams I once had for my daughter, and stood in a courtroom accused of stealing the very lives I saved. I've learned that motherhood doesn't end when your children walk away. Sometimes, it begins all over again when they do. If my story touched your heart, if you felt the weight of love, betrayal, or the kind of strength that only comes from holding a family together, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next story. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd truly love to know.